Guys, I have a big announcement to make. So, I've been thinking about this, I've been holding this back for a long while now, so I just figured I'll just say it out loud. So, it's really sad for me to say this, but I am in fact a Filipino. Yeah, I may not look or sound like it, but it's true. And I definitely did not put an effort to not hide it at all. But it's actually a good thing that I mentioned this right now because it brings up a very important topic, in my opinion, that I feel like I should address. And it's about Filipinos that self hate online, continue to bash themselves online, even though they risk themselves being exposed to other people. But yeah, I'm sure that a lot of you are pretty much aware of that. So I figured that I would just create a simple podcast, unscripted type of video format to in a way to formally address this to you guys. So that's why I'm making this video right now. Alright, before I talk about the topic at hand, I'd just like to mention this disclaimer. I understand that I'm making this video during the Christmas season. It should be a time where we get together, relax, and we get together with friends and family. So if you feel like this video is a little too sensitive for you to handle, then I recommend that you put it down for now and then watch it another time. And I really feel like I should mention this because this is directed towards my fellow Filipinos. But I genuinely feel and understand that I may come off as rude to you, I might sound rude, but I genuinely feel that I do not trust many of you guys to make this video or address this topic yourselves because at the rate of where we're going at this point with this, I feel like you guys might shed it on a bad light and actually make it look even worse. So yeah, I just wanted to point that out. And alright, with that all said, let's go straight into the topic. So to start off, why have I decided to make this video in the first place? So I guess I could say what really triggered me or compelled me to make this video is of all the videos I see online about Philippine slander or Filipinos being trashed on. And when you look at all of those videos, they're pretty much quite memey in nature. But you really get the feeling that of all the issues that we Filipinos struggle through every day. And then you get into the comments and you see a lot of these people basically saying, yeah, being a Filipino is not a joke. It's a disease or an illness that we all suffer from. And there's pretty much this stigma online of people who are coming out as Filipino, especially if they're pretty influential, if they're pretty big content creators. And then a lot of these people leave comments like, yeah, I'm really proud that you came out as Filipino. It's a very hard thing for you to do as a Filipino. And yeah, those comments, all those videos I see pretty much lit a fire in me, so to speak, about how we are pretty much taking this over the top and we really need to chill because it's actually pretty concerning if you think about it. And also, all of this self-hatred also has largely to do with the issues and the problems that the Philippines faces as a nation with all the corruption, the poverty, the natural disasters that we have to go through. So yeah, all these factors added together also basically contributes to the problem as well. And despite all that, even though we have such crappy internet here, we still manage to be among the top, if not the top users of social media or the people who spend the most time on social media, especially on Facebook, on YouTube, on all kinds of social media. And if you couple that with the avid and prolonged use of social media, with the colonial mentality, and you combine that together, then that pretty much spells disaster in our eyes about self-hate and these tendencies to bash on ourselves all the time. So yeah. And despite all that, despite all these comments that I see, there's this irony that I've been paying attention to, that I've been noticing, is that whenever we Filipinos talk about ourselves, we always put each other down. We feel miserable about ourselves. We feel very, very awful about the issues and all these problems that we face in our country. But as soon as someone from the outside or when foreigners discuss our country or praising it for even the slightest or the smallest of things, we always feel so prideful. We're really proud of it, and we make such a big deal out of it, like spamming the comment section, like basically the Swagapinos. You know what I'm talking about, the Swagapinos. So yeah, it's pretty much an ironic thing. So why am I mentioning this? What does this have to do with self-hate? Well, here's what I think about it. A lot of the self-hate or the masochistic tendency Filipinos get to, I feel like it's mostly based towards the lack of attention that we get from outside, from other nations, from foreigners. So it really makes sense, right, when you think about it, because it really boils down to colonial mentality, how we Filipinos as a nation and as individuals, we feel neglected, we feel oppressed by the rest of the world because we feel like we don't have much of a cultural impact or a social or a pop cultural influence on the rest of the world. So yeah, so to clarify, I'm not saying that I'm not guilty of this. Of course I'm not. I also tend to talk negative about my country in front of my family, in front of my friends as well. Because of course, our country is far from perfect. And of course, it would seem that our country is failing in comparison to other countries, to wealthier nations that seem to be doing much better. But another reason why I feel compelled to make this video is because I feel like I plan to do videos in the future that talk about these issues, about our issues here in the Philippines at full length. And I feel like those kinds of videos will trigger these Filipinos that tend to self-hate a lot online. And I really want to make sure that I clarify in this at this point that we should not try and engage in this behavior too much, or if not at all. Alright, so don't get me wrong. I do not inherently hate these kinds of people, these kinds of my fellow countrymen who engage in this sort of behavior. Because on one hand, I feel like we will actually share a lot of beliefs on regards to our issues and opinions on how we can solve these issues in our country. Because for one thing, I actually supported Lenny Robredo, just like as many as you guys did during the presidential campaign, even though I myself couldn't vote yet. I'm also for defending press freedom against those who want to silence critics and activists, especially those on regards to environmental issues. And I'm also for breaking certain taboos for discussion in Filipino families and spaces, just like on the topic of sex and sex education, basically the idea of woke Filipinos in social media, woke Filipinos generally. So yeah, on the topic of our own interests, I myself actually consume a lot of foreign media from time to time. I actually enjoy watching anime, reading manga, and basically Japanese culture as much as any otaku does, or as many as you guys do. I also occasionally listen to K-pop and watch K-dramas because a lot of my friends do as well. And that's basically one way that we bond with each other. I feel like one major thing that separates me from a lot of these people is that I'm actually a little more patriotic than them in terms of the type of media that we ourselves create. Because I actually believe in the future of OPM, or original Filipino music, hitting the mainstream, just like K-pop and J-pop and American music does. I also believe that our films, our drama series, and even some potential future cartoons or animations that we can make can actually compete with these types of media, these types of foreign media from countries that we hold up on a pedestal and we idolize as a certain standard. Because we don't necessarily have to like these things, because I will admit, just like you guys do, that what we create doesn't stand a chance or isn't as good as the standards that we see in the US or in Japan and Korea, for example. But we can at least try and appreciate what we have, because it's at least something tangible that we can work with. And on that note, because it can actually display certain Filipino values, some very positive values that we have, like treasuring a lot of love in our life, family ties, and a lot of these helpful and very, very loving and respectful Filipino values that we can show in our media. Because, yeah, I genuinely think that we have a chance if we just put our mind to it and work towards that goal, so that in a way we can actually become more pop culturally influenceable in a way. Because I'm not overly prideful in a way that I'm completely like a Filipino nationalist, so to speak, in a way. I'm not so delusional. I'm not so proud of my heritage in the fact that I'm completely rejecting outside influences. That's not the case. That's not what I'm trying to say. So yeah, I'm somewhere in between those two extremes on that regard. I'm not overly prideful as a Filipino. I'm not a freaking masochistic netizen, if you get what I mean. This actually brings me to the highlight of this topic, because on top of all of the self-hate that we Filipinos tend to engage in on a regular basis, there's this sort of mindset or this certain type of thinking that certain Filipinos like to lean towards, thinking that if they were born as someone else, especially as a Japanese person, as a Korean, or as an American, that they'll have a much happier and fulfilling life because in their eyes, those countries are actually perfect, or not really perfect, but at least doing much better than our own country is doing. So down in the comment section of videos and social media or in forum posts, I always see comments saying, "Yeah, I wish I was born as a Korean instead. I wish I was born as a Japanese or American instead, because those countries seem to be doing a lot better than our stupid countries how they're doing. So yeah, if I was born as a Korean or as a Japanese person, then I would have a much happier and prosperous life there." And yeah, it's a really sad thing to admit, because it's really come to a point where Filipinos are willing to denounce their own culture, their traditions, and their nationalities in favor of foreign identities, foreign nationalities like Korea, Japan, and Americas. Like I've been always saying, it's not really a healthy mindset to begin with, because of course it actually feeds into and worsens the colonial mentality or the colonial thinking that we Filipinos have always been instilled into our minds from the days of colonial rule, the colonial years. And that's really not a healthy way of thinking in the 21st century, actually, because it's always through the lenses of pop cultural media or influences that Filipinos tend to base their opinions on, their stances on, when it comes to how we see our country and the way we see other people's countries, the other foreign nations that are first world countries to be particular. So that's why we always tend to see our nation as inferior compared to other nations, because we get so enamored by all of the prospects and all of the good things we see from Japan, Korea, America, whatever, and we get so frustrated. We get so angry about all the issues that we here in the Philippines tend to face from time to time, from a daily basis, that our views get skewed in favor of other nations towards our own. So that's really such a big burden on us, on ourselves. That's something that we shouldn't constantly be worrying about. Because what am I trying to say here? Just because we many Filipinos view Japan and Korea and America as perfect paradises, or safe spaces or countries to live in, doesn't mean that actual Americans or Koreans or Japanese view their own country in the same way. You know what I mean? Because they have their own problems to deal with, separate to our own country, to our own problems in the Philippines. So you get the idea basically, right? The problems that we face here in the Philippines does not undermine the problems that Japan, America, and Korea has to deal with, basically. I'm sure I will get into the problems of my own country and these other countries in future videos at greater length. So, but basically, to give you guys an idea, in Japan, for example, they're facing an aging population, a rapidly aging population, and that could lead to a decline in their workforce in the future, because we see that their economy, the rate in which their economy is growing, is starting to slow down. It's not accelerating just as it used to back then during the Cold War, for example. And on top of that, there's also high rates of suicide and depression and loneliness that a regular Japanese person deals with because of all of the unnecessary stress that they have to go through in the workplace, and also the outdated work culture in many Japanese workspaces, and how certain conditions are not really ideal to work in. So, and that's just basically give an idea that our idea of Japan being a perfect country is very far away from what is actually happening, because we're basically so skewed on what we basically just see Japan on such a small space in terms of the media that they put out in anime and manga and so on. So yeah. So let's move on to Korea now. In Korea, of course, I'm sure many of you are aware of this, that many average Koreans tend to face a lot of, or deal with a lot of household debt. Even if they're working, they struggle to pay off this debt a lot of the times. And that's basically one of the reasons why Squid Game was created. And of course, and on top of that, there's actually a lot of issues or problems that we Filipinos and Koreans face, actually, because there's a lot of issues in terms of gender rights in terms of dealing with the societal norms that certain Koreas have a certain biased agenda towards. And actually, on a greater note, um, Koreans actually face a lot of bullying and harassment in school or even in the workplace, because even if they may look a little different or they may act a little different in comparison to many other Koreans in their space, they have a high chance of getting bullied, of being ostracized. And of course, we all know that in the Philippines, that's a rare occurrence, if not at all. It doesn't really occur at all. Because here in the Philippines, we tend to treat everyone equally. We give equal respect to everyone. We don't discriminate against people. And that's really something that we can at least be proud of. And as for America, well, America can speak for itself, basically. So yeah, if we continue to have this stifled or this repressed or this skewed vision between our country against other countries that we tend to favor, it actually undermines a lot of the positive things that we Filipinos tend to do. The certain impacts that we have, these positive impacts that we have on the world, because we are the biggest exporter of nurses, and in Asia we tend to care a lot towards the sick and the lonely. We give great priority towards them regularly, and we're basically a lot of friendly and outgoing people from the Philippines that we can build strong relationships with. And yeah, what I'm trying to say is that there's plenty of other ways that we can have an impact on the world aside from just basically pop culture or media or all these types of art forms that can a lot and in many ways break our view or actually create a biased view on how we view ourselves and other countries like in East Asia or in the West. So yeah, Filipinos, just stop hating yourselves, all right? If we continue to engage in this sort of behavior, we're not doing anything for progress. We're not doing anything to better or improve our lives here as Filipinos. If anything, we're actually making ourselves look even worse to others. And isn't at the end of the day what we want other people or other cultures or foreign nations actually seeing ourselves as more developed and more privileged and civilized at the end of the day, right? So yeah, stop hating on yourselves. And I guess basically stop promoting or engaging in these Filipino slander videos or in these comments. Because as much as I would admit that they are funny most of the time, I am pretty much tired of seeing of them because they actually, of course, degrade my morale, even though at times I should be motivated to get work done. And of course, stop idolizing these countries such as Japan, Korea, and America, or other more developed or first nation countries. Because even though they may seem perfect on the surface, we really need to do some more research on our part and see if these countries that we praise and we see as perfect paradises are actually that perfect or that safe. So yeah, so that's pretty much all I want to say in this video. I'm sorry if I've upset or triggered any of you guys, I know, but this is really a certain topic that I have certain passion towards that I really wanted to get off my chest. So yeah, that's pretty much it I wanted to say in this video. I promise that I will do more fun videos, more uplifting and engaging videos in the future, probably especially next year. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So let me know what your opinions are in the comments below, and I'll see you next time.